Hi friends! Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to do a check-in and quarterly review of how things have been going so far with my planning and journaling system. I'm gonna do my best to keep this somewhat concise. Feel free to grab yourself a tea, coffee, or your favorite cozy beverage and grab your journal or planner or whatever activity you would like to do to keep you company as we hang out and reflect on how things have gone for the last few months. In case you're curious, I am currently drinking a chamomile tea with some milk. It sounds like a bit of a weird combination, but my father-in-law started doing this last year when they came to visit us, and I really liked the combination. Okay, so I'm gonna organize these into different piles. I think I'm going to put planning and functional stuff into one pile, and then I'm gonna put like fun and memory keeping stuff into the other pile. So we've got these two piles here. One thing that I want to call out is you may notice that my cousin is currently naked without a cover. So normally I have it housed in this Superior Labor A5 cover, which I love, and it's been slowly developing this beautiful patina ever since I got it. But sadly, I had an accident yesterday and I spilled some ink on the cover. So I'm trying not to freak out, but I tried to get this ink out with water. Then I tried water with a bit of dish soap, and I even tried rubbing alcohol for better or for worse. I haven't had any luck. So a viewer told me a few videos ago that saddle soap can help clean leather. I am going to make one last attempt to see if I can get this ink stain out. So wish me luck. I'll share an update. I'm very sad about this accident, but I guess if I can't get it out, then it is just part of the story of this cover. So this will eventually go back onto the cousin, but for now I've just taken the cover off because I plan on attempting to clean this stain after this video. So this time last year I was working full-time and I was in school part-time, and because of that, most of my working day lived on Google Calendar because that is what we all used at work. My entire task list and was a lot of meetings was all handled digitally on Google Calendar. So my needs for a planner were very different in that most of what I needed to keep track of was school deadlines. So all I really needed was my traveler's notebook, where I had a monthly insert, and then I had a blank insert, which I was just using for a rolling daily task list. I was also just getting into meal planning, and I also didn't have a self-care plan. And all my notes that I took for meetings related to work, that was all handled at work due to confidentiality. I didn't really have a need for an analog system, and I actually had tried a bullet journaling system years ago for work related stuff, but it didn't make sense because a lot of my tasks were dependent on other people. So that was last year. This year, I am working as a freelance consultant, so I no longer work full-time at one company. I work with different clients and I have to keep track of that on my own. I'm still in school, so I have a course that I take part-time that has deadlines, things like that I have to remember. I'm also doing like an internship that is also part-time, so basically I'm not necessarily doing anything full-time, and I'm doing a lot of part-time tasks that I need to keep track of. So my days and my weeks are very different than they are compared to last year. Whereas this year, I'm managing multiple calendars, and as much as I have tried to sync all of them to one personal digital calendar, it doesn't actually happen fast enough in real time, if that makes sense. So if a meeting gets booked in my calendar, depending on the software that the meeting was booked in, it doesn't always get synced to my personal calendar fast enough for me to keep track of it. So I have learned that the easiest way for me to track everything is a combination of digital and then also in my analog system, because that's just how my brain works, and I'm much more likely to show up to meetings when I can see it in writing and I'm aware that it's happening. Maybe I'll start with personal things that I've been tracking this year. I'll just do a really quick flip through of some of them. This is something that I've always had in my system, whether I was thinking about it as a system or not. This is just my personal diary, and I've always had some kind of notebook that I use to write down whatever's on my mind. So there isn't a ton of structure that I use for this journal apart from, and this is just a blank sterling ink notebook in the traveler size, and I can't remember how many pages it has, but it's like the full year version. And I didn't want the TN string to ruin the spine of the notebook, so it's housed in an olive green traveler's notebook, and I have a clip here. This is the Pro Gear Slim Line Friends Brown, and right now I have Pilot Irishizuku Inaho, which was a sample that I got from Danielle from my Dandelion Diary, so thank you so much. I've really been enjoying this ink, and I cherish it because I know that it is discontinued. That is my journal. And the second thing in this personal category is my 5-year Hobonichi. I'm not in this every day. This is like a weekly ritual for me because this is my second year updating this 5-year journal. I am really enjoying it this time around because now when I update my entries, I can also reference what was happening the year before. So it's become a very reflective practice for me, and I really enjoy this book. So this is going strong. Next up, we have my A6 Fun Journal. So this is an A6 original, and when I purchased this A6 last year in September, I had thought that I might use this primarily as a book for my internship. So I had originally bought a weekly supplement, and my plan was to use this to track activities in my internship because I have to track my hours and I have a lot of different meetings. And so I thought I could try using this book for the purpose of appointments and anything specific to my internship. And then I thought this was something that I could use to take notes for the specific appointments and things that I had to keep track of. So I was expecting this to be almost like a test for downsizing my cousin. So I was thinking I would use my cousin in 2024 and then experiment with using this system for my internship, and then as of 2025 possibly downsizing from the cousin into a system like this. And as we got closer to January of 2024, I just decided to pivot this A6 into more of like a fun journal because I didn't know if I needed to dedicate an entire book to taking notes, mainly because I now just use a blank notebook to take notes, and that notebook gets locked away in a cabinet and there's a lot of confidential information, and I just realized that this wasn't really going to work for the purpose that I had thought it might work for. So I pivoted this to being more of a fun journal. And I did test out temporarily how I felt about using this as my weekly in the way that I use the Cousin, which I'll show you in a minute. But for now, this just feels a little too small for everything that I'm doing. I may revisit this at the later half of this year when I finish school and my life gets a little more simplified. This might be enough, but for now, the Cousin is fulfilling that need and I'm not needing this weekly supplement. As for my fun journal, I have not figured out how to use these yearly pages at all, so they're still blank. If you have ideas, please let me know. I would love to hear them, but for now they're blank. So my monthlies are primarily now being used for tracking when I try a new ink in a pen, and I also have a couple of things noted down about like fun things that I want to remember, and it's kind of turning into mainly fun things related with stationery, so like pens and inks and that kind of thing. I think that's great. February, I actually tried a lot more bright colors, which I think is really fun. So it feels like January was more muted, earthy colors, and then February I tried a lot more like bright inks. So that's been fun to look back on. I also experimented with adding tons of stickers everywhere, and I think I overdid it a little bit. Yeah, I've also experimented with drawing in the trying in the calendar months. I might do something like that in future months. I thought that was pretty fun because the space is so small that it doesn't take long to do little sketches. And we are into March. I haven't really inked up too many. That's what it's looking like. So usually what I do is these are blank, and then I fill in as necessary, and then once the month is over, I'll come back and I'll add stickers and decoration if I feel like it. And then we have our dailies. So one thing that I really wish the A6 had is the weekly, because I find that my brain just really enjoys thinking about my week in this vertical, and I've had so many planners in my life that use the horizontal view that the Weeks uses, and I've never been able to stick with a weekly view all year round before. And it wasn't until I started using the vertical weeklies as a way to mirror my Google Calendar that it really stuck with me. I think it's just the way to visualize my week. I just find it really helpful for me to get a feel for how to spend my time throughout the week. What I really like about this A6 is that I could put this in my purse, and it is a thicker book, but I like that it would fit into my purse as opposed to my Cousin, which would not. So I still have a desire to maybe make this work, but given that the A6 only has the monthly and then it goes straight into the dailies, that is something that I'm having trouble wrapping my head around. So I don't know if I will actually switch over in 2025, but it's on my mind. So I've mainly been using this just to play around with different inks. Sometimes I do some stamping. Sometimes some sketching. This was me playing around with my Deco Rush tapes. This was when I got a new set of PET tapes from, the name of the artist is escaping me, but she's very popular in the stationery world, so I will update the name in the description. I find it really fun to play with really large swatches. When Hobonichi announced the spring lineup of covers, I absolutely fell head over heels in love with the cover with the cats surfing on bread slices, and it was just so whimsical and cute, but I did not need a new Hobonichi planner cover, And so I just kind of sketched it out. I really like looking at it. I think one thing is missing is I need to add credit to the artist that this illustration was done by. And then at the beginning of every month, I tend to do a currently inked, and then I'll do one mid-month because I just change my pens as they run out of ink. So I don't necessarily always start the month with a whole fresh lineup of pens. So then I just did a bunch of sketches for this month. So I think I had a little more free time in February. And looking at these is kind of making me want to do more of this because I did not have nearly as much time to do this in March. And this is a comparison between Pilot Irizuku Inaho and Ferris Wheel Press Goose Poupon. And you can see here in mid-February, I really brightened up the palette a lot. So I think it's really fun to see like where I started the month out with, and then halfway through, like what this looked like. And this is a comparison between Ferris Wheel Press and Wonder Pen's Writing Desk, which is one of my all-time favorite inks, and Birmingham Pen Co. Extra Dimensional Umber. I only have a sample of this, and when you write with it and it's still like wet, this is incredibly, incredibly shiny. But when they dry, it's really astounding to me like how similar these inks actually look to each other. This one is still a little bit warmer overall, especially with writing, but I just think it's so interesting to see them side by side like this. Here is the infamous Teranishi Guitar Opera Rose. I was influenced by Leanne Likes. She spoke so highly of this color, and every time I watched her swatch it, I fell more in love with it. And so I had an opportunity to get a sample, instantly fell in love with it. So I thoroughly enjoyed this ink. And I also got a sample of Nostalgic Honey, and I think the swatch is stunning. It's currently in my Vanishing Point fine nib, and I'm just okay with it. It's a little bit lighter than I would like it to be, but I'm gonna put some of the sample in a broader nib. This was a quick inventory of all the Ferris Wheel Press inks that I currently own. Frontenac Blue is a sample, but the rest of these I have full bottles of. This was another purchase influenced by Leanne Likes. So she did an Opera Rose comparison, and Sailor 573 was one of the inks that she compared to it. And I also really fell in love with that shade. It was this one and Color versus Brunch Date. And I happened to be in a stationery store in Toronto called Take Note, and they happened to have this color, and this was one of those impulse purchases that I don't really need to hide, I guess. So I have no regrets. I've been using both. They're similar but different. Thank you, Leanne, for introducing me to this one as well. This was me just experimenting with this extra dimensional. If I didn't already have Writing Desk, I would be very tempted to get a bottle of Birmingham Pen Co.'s Extra Dimensional Umber. It is warmer in the pen, so it is a different ink, but I think it's similar enough that I do not need a full bottle, but I will thoroughly enjoy the sample that I have. And March is when things kind of go a little off the rails, because March was a very busy month for me, so I honestly didn't have as much time to open this book. This is a label of a beer that Mike and I really enjoyed, so I wanted to remember it because I don't drink a lot of beer, but I really enjoyed this stout. Empty pages. This was that tea that I've referenced a few times in my video. And then mid-March, this is what I currently have inked in my pens. It feels very warm to me. And I didn't even do a currently inked for the beginning of March. So that tells you how crazy March was. But I like this color palette actually. It's really nice. I feel like I have nice variety. And then Danielle sent me some Happy Mail recently, and here are some samples of washi that she gave me. And then I inked up Inaho, and unfortunately, paintbrush that I used initially to draw some of this out must have not been cleaned properly, so this is not what Inaho looks like dark. It is closer to this, but this is kind of like Inaho with a touch of whatever else I had on that paintbrush, so that was my bad. And then here is another Birmingham Pen Co. sample that I got from Danielle. Because purple seems to be the color of March for Hobonichi, I thought it was a good time to introduce some purples. And that is all I have. So, okay, so next up we have my home and garden planner. And I just did a video on this where I talked about how it didn't work out in the way that I thought it was going to. I think this will be interesting to revisit at the end of Q2 because I do have a lot of projects planned for our garden as well as our home in the next few months, because I anticipate I'll have a little more time. So you can see, like, I have a couple of projects lined up for April, but it started out as like a task log for home related things, and then I eventually pivoted it to being more of a like board inspiration book. And then as we get into the coming weeks, it might turn back into a planner. I haven't decided yet. This one is kind of like a question mark. Don't really have a solid plan for it, so it's probably going to shift and change throughout the year. In the back, I have some notes for different rooms that I'm planning on doing work in. And that's mainly it. There's not really a lot going on in this one. Okay, next up we have the meal planner. So this is another one that I've talked about a lot on my channel, so I won't spend too much time. I still have no idea what I want to do with this page, so if you have any ideas, let me know, but for now it's blank. On the monthly calendar view, this is where I note down amounts that we're spending at grocery stores and at restaurants that we're eating out at. I haven't decided if I want to like tally these all up and maybe note down like how much we're spending. I think that's where I'm probably going to go with this, but for now it's just been helpful to see. Green dots are when we go to restaurants, and then these dots are when we go grocery shopping. And then in the weeklies, this is where occasionally, if I have the room, I'll write down thoughts at a restaurant that we'll go to, and I just do all my planning here. And I have these random food stickers that I'm not a huge fan of, but they seem to make the most sense to use them in this book. Yeah, like there's no peach reference anywhere here other than I had some stickers that had the word peach on it. So this is going really well. We're keeping up very well with this. In the notes pages, I've got my legend for my dot stickers, and then I note down itemized lists of what we're spending. This seems repetitive, but it allows me to compare prices between different grocery stores. And at the beginning of the year, I went to Costco and we bought a 3-pack of toothpaste, and it's just nice to see like how long it takes for us to go through bulk items. Plus, it gives me an opportunity to use my pens, which I'm never going to be unhappy about. So this is going pretty well. And I also add in recipes that I'm trying out. In the back, I've got I've got this 365 days. I have to fill this out. I'm slightly unmotivated to fill it out because it's so messy, and I realize that it's gonna be hard to figure out what day of the year it is. So I've been not the greatest at filling this out, but I'm gonna keep at it. Probably gonna happen in batches. And then I also have lists of things that I typically get at specific grocery stores. I have a little pen and ink combo that I sometimes update. And then here I've been noting down different meals that we like to have by season. So when I get stuck on meal planning, I have an extra place to reference if I need some quick ideas. And that's it for this book. Okay, next up we have Health and Wellness Journal, which lives inside my TN. So typically this gets tucked into this folder here. This is what it looks like. I've also done quite a lot of videos on this one. I absolutely love it. I have to update March, but here I'm tracking my steps according to my Apple Watch. And I think what I'm going to do up here is just mark down the highest, the lowest, maybe the average. I'm going to skip through the monthlies, but essentially what I do in the monthlies is when I do something social with a friend or a family member, I note down who I saw on what day. And the idea for the monthly is just to give me a sense of how much am I socializing, because one of the signs that my health and wellness isn't at a great level is when I start withdrawing from my friends and family. And so it's nice to have monthly visual reminder of how I'm doing. And if I start to see a lot of empty squares, then that is a signal for me that I might want to take some action. And then the other thing that I track in here are anything related with like medication. So I've been dealing with a really bad eczema flare up, and I've been getting like different medication to help manage it. So I've just been noting down when I go to the doctor, if I'm prescribed something, and how long I should be like using whatever I'm prescribed. So that's all happening in the monthly. And my weeklies, I'm basically tracking weather, my mood, and some notes on the left-hand side of the weekly. And then on the right-hand side, I've got some habits, my sleep, my mood, and then just some notes. So the layout has remained pretty consistent. I started this in December actually, so this is 4 months worth. And I'm honestly really shocked at how consistent I've been. Sometimes I go back and I add stickers. I think that's something that I might do retroactively just so that the pages are maybe a little more interesting to look at. But I keep it pretty simple. Setting this up takes me like a couple minutes at the end of each week. And I haven't changed the layout at all. I've thought about playing with different layouts, but because I'm in a busy season of my life, just keeping things consistent has worked out really well for me. And I'm more likely to come in here and fill it out like when there's a structure and I know exactly what needs to happen. So keeping this updated takes a few minutes in the morning every day, and it's become part of my like self-care ritual. So I really love this because it gives me so much information, and it really helps me reflect on how I'm doing in terms of my self-care and whether there's anything that I might need to tweak if I'm noticing like a downward trend. And I have another video where I spend a lot more time talking about how I used this book to help me overcome the Sunday scaries. So if you're interested in that, check out that video. And then in the back, I'm tracking like TV shows we're watching, movies we're watching, books read, currently sitting at 0. Date log, I had an NaNoWriMo log where I tracked like how many letters I sent in the month. And then I do my monthly recaps in the back. Pretty personal, but it's basically, I have a section of like who I connected with that month, highlights, lowlights, and top 5 things that happened in that month. It's a really nice little reflection that I do at the end of the month, and I really enjoy it. So that's happening in this book as well. So that's my health and wellness tracker. Next up, we have my traveler's notebook. Did go ahead and I bookmarked a page just to give you a sense of what it looks like. I mean, obviously there's not a lot you can see here, but how I use this notebook is I dedicate at the beginning of the week a section for major things that need to happen that week. So usually this relates to school, where I'll have like readings that I need to do, assignments that are due, that kind of thing. And then I'll just have like a rolling day and then a list. And I did contemplate putting this in my cousin, which I'll talk about next. I experimented with it very briefly, and it just works better for me somehow to keep it separate in this book. I don't know if I will continue this once this insert is done. I started this insert in June of 2023. And I think this is probably going to take me until like maybe the fall. And when I finish this insert, I'm not sure if I'm going to do one again. I think that'll be an opportunity for me to reflect on whether I want to continue this format in this TN or if I want to try something else. But I won't worry about that until I'm finished this insert. So it's currently in a Galen leather everyday notebook. It's a blank Tomoe River paper, traveler's notebook size. That's my TN. We are on to the last book. I have never flipped through my cousin before on the internet. And the reason why is because I make this book work for me, which means I do use acronyms and code names and things like that, but generally I don't censor myself too much in here because it's supposed to be something that I can use to keep me on track and focused. So I thought it would be fun to give you a glimpse of how I'm using the weeklies, because the weeklies is why I don't know if I can quit the cousin next year. It's a really integral part of my system, but I haven't really shown too much of it on my channel before just because it's kind of hard to censor all the information. So I'm gonna do a flip through. I have covered up everything that I don't think I would want on the internet, but a word of warning that what you are gonna see is pages and pages of sticky notes. This may be boring because most of it's covered up, but maybe it'll be interesting to you to see how I'm using it. So let's take a look. So this book I am currently using for work and school. Originally, when I made my Hobonichi purchase last year, I thought I was going to use this for my consulting work, and I thought I was going to use this for school, and then I thought I was going to use this for my internship. But one of the learnings that I had when I had my little planner fail with this home and garden is I really don't like compartmentalizing absolutely everything in my life. So I find the cousin does a really good job of combining my school, my internship, and my consulting work all in the weekly. So in terms of the yearly, using this as an index, and I got this idea from Lindsay Scribbles. I use my daily pages as notes. So anytime I have a meeting, whether that's for school or my consulting work, as long as it's not too confidential, I'm using the daily pages to take notes. So that's what I'm using the index for. And then I always struggle to use the monthly views, honestly. So what I've been kind of experimenting with is I've been using it for keeping track of my YouTube videos, and this is only my second month of doing it, is I'll write down video ideas on little stickies and I'll put them down on the dates that I would ideally like to post them. And of course I can move them around if I want to, and I also have room to put video ideas on the side. And then at the end of the month, I go in and I just note down like what days I actually posted, and I find that Honestly, my monthly calendar is most useful digitally because that is something that changes so often. So I don't find the monthly view helpful for me in the Cousin. And then for the weeklies, this is why I love the Cousin so much. So this is my weekly, and it started out in the first week of January. I was still on vacation. This was primarily just logging random things that I wanted to remember. I would just write it in with a Tombow marker and outline it. So I just found this a fun way to log what was going on in my life. And down here, I just note down like what I eat for lunch and what I eat for dinner. As I started working again and school started, I started using this as a place to note down meetings coming up. So I have a legend down here, and each color represents a different priority. It's very necessary for me just because I'm making meetings with people in different time zones, and I'm also balancing completely different worlds. So for my brain, it's been a lifesaver to plan in this way. It also happens on my digital calendar, but I just find that this is actually even faster sometimes than my digital calendar because some of those meetings aren't updating and syncing into my calendar fast enough. So I've been finding this is the best way to avoid double booking meetings. So what I usually do is I'll highlight everything that I already know is coming up at the beginning of the week, and then I'll change things around as things get moved around. And then in the empty space, I'll usually write words down if there are things that I want to remember. And then after the week is done, I'll go in and I'll add stickers in all the other empty spaces. So I don't know how interesting this is because I know there are a lot of sticky notes, but this system is working out really, really well for me. And I mentioned earlier that I have to track my hours for my consulting work as well as my internship. So this is a really easy way for me to do that. And then I can update my trackers retroactively at the end of the week. So that's been really helpful for me. On the side here, I usually write down important dates to remember. So let's say I have a vacation coming up. Since I'm not using my monthly, what I'll do is once that vacation is booked, I'll actually note it down in the week, like in the coming week on the side. So by the time I come to this week and I'm planning it, I already have things that I need to remember. And I don't know why, but I just find it a lot more helpful to have it in the weekly pages as opposed to in my month. I'm always referencing my digital monthly calendar. So assignments that are due that I know ahead of time, vacations, doctor's appointments, invoicing that I have to do, all of that I put on the side here. And I have been also experimenting with maybe putting in weekly chores that I need to do since I'm not using this book for that purpose anymore. I keep up with this also on a daily basis, and it's like my brain. I apparently think this way. I don't really know how to explain why I find this so much better than a digital calendar, because you would think a digital calendar is even more up to date and easier to reference because you can reference it on your phone or whatever. But this is how I keep my life organized. It's working so well. And ever since I've really committed to this weekly view, I'm not as forgetful about things, and I can really see visually if I have too much going on that day. It'll give me a visual cue to say, oh, maybe I need to see if I can switch different things around, or maybe this is the day that I don't cook that night, or I can see if I don't have enough buffer time in between meetings. I would love to find a way to translate this into the weekly supplement, but each box is an hour, as opposed to in the Cousin, each box is half an hour. As much as I sometimes find the size of the Cousin a little bit overwhelming, maybe when I have less going on in my life and I'm not balancing consulting work and school and my internship, maybe I won't need to time block in this way. I'm just recognizing that right now I do need to, but maybe this will change. And I'm not going to show my dailies just because it's going to be too hard to cover it up. Basically, I'm just using them as like notebooks. So if I have a meeting, I'll use those pages. If I need to take notes on something related with school, that's where I will take notes. So if I'm finding that I need to grab something to take notes in, this is the book that I'm using. That is my Cousin. And I will say I started the year off being the least excited about the Cousin because I kind of had all these cute little weeks, which I adore, and I felt kind of overwhelmed with the amount of space that this Cousin has. Like with the dailies, I sometimes don't need to use a whole daily page every day for notes, but I do find that between all the things that I've got going on in my life right now, I am filling out most of the pages. And I have thought about, instead of using it as a notebook, maybe I can write my daily tasks in the daily pages down the line, and that might be possible if I'm not needing so much space to take notes. So I don't know. I'm not sure what I'm going to do moving forward. For now, this may not be the most exciting book, but I don't think I could function without this book. So I really appreciate this book, and I wanted to give it some love on my channel because I usually don't talk about it much. Hopefully you still got something out of the weekly views despite all of the sticky notes. I did want to do a bit of a reflection to cap off this video, but I have to leave for a dinner, so I might come back and film like a part 2 of this. For now, I'm gonna end the video and I'll be back later. Hello again. It is several hours later and we just got back, so I am going to try to wrap this up as quickly as possible because I have already talked for a very long time and this video is already getting pretty long. So I think where we left off is I had just finished doing a flip through of mainly my planner system, and I wanted to end this quarterly review with a reflection, and I have a few questions in mind to help guide my reflection. And those are, okay, first of all, what happened? So we touched on that by going over all of the different books that I'm using right now. How are things different between this time last year? Because I think it is interesting to consider how my context may have changed from this year to last year. With my planner system being different, how much has my current planning system supported the way my life has changed now? What did I learn through this reflection? What will I change moving forward? And overall, how do I feel? So we already touched on what happened by going through this flip through. Now in terms of what's different. So at the beginning of this video, I talked about how this time last year I was working full-time and I was in school part-time and I was also volunteering. So those were kind of my main priorities last year, and the majority of my planning and note-taking was happening digitally within my job at the time. And then everything school-related was happening in my traveler's notebook. I had just been getting into meal planning. I didn't have a self-care plan. I was missing meetings all the time, especially when they were outside of working hours, because I didn't have a good system to remember them, and I wasn't really looking at my work calendar outside of working hours, and then I wasn't really updating my personal calendar or checking it on a regular basis. And my TN was my second brain, and that was working very well for my life at the time. Or this year, working as a freelance consultant, so those hours are less certain. Sometimes I'm working full-time hours, sometimes I'm working part-time hours. It really depends on the project and the stage of the project. So I get paid on a project basis as opposed to on a salary. I am still completing school coursework part-time, and I am completing a practicum internship that is kind of towing the line between part-time and not quite full-time, but it's quite involved. And so because of this, I'm managing multiple calendars that don't sync with each other, and they're in different time zones, and they're for completely different parts of what's going on in my life. So there's a lot of moving pieces this year from different places compared to last year. All my tasks are coming from all over the place, so there's definitely a stronger need to have a centralized system to consolidate all of that. And as you can see, I have a meal planning system set up. I have a health and wellness tracker that I'm keeping, and then I have this home and garden planner that's had varied success. So that's how things are different. And I would say I have compartmentalized certain things compared to last year, so that's one main difference. And it's working really well for health and wellness, and it's working really well for meal planning, but it hasn't been working so well for home and garden. However, now that we are heading into spring and there will be some more garden type stuff coming up, we will see. This may be used more often throughout those months, or maybe I'll continue to keep it in its current form, which is basically like a mood board / project planner for house things that aren't so tied to timing, if that makes sense. My TN is still being used as my daily task list, but I will say my cousin is more of my second brain this year compared to last year, because of those weeklies, which are the only thing that is keeping me from going crazy with trying to keep track of all these different things that are going on in my life. So those are the main differences. What did I learn in terms of what I'm seeing? So some of those differences, I'm finding certain things are compartmentalized, and I think that's a good thing considering who uses these systems. So having meal planning in a separate book is really great because it's something that Mike has gotten on board with, and he's going in here and he's helping out. And I also enjoy taking this book with me to when I go grocery shopping because it's just so small and it fits really well into my purse. So I really like that. Plus, it is an adorable cover, and I really, really love this cover. And I like being able to compartmentalize my health and wellness in this book as well. I think the Hobonichi Weeks is really good for keeping track of a single subject. Although what I'm finding is there are some instances where it doesn't work as well. Like as an example with this home and garden, it didn't work so well for planning house chores. And that might just be a me thing because I am not motivated enough to track it in a completely separate book. And for me to remember to do these things, it has to be in a place that I'm referencing every day, which is why I think it belongs in my cousin or in my TN. So that's one thing, is that I think maybe I've been teetering on like too many books, and while it works really well for some subjects, like didn't work as well for others. So I think in terms of what I would change is if I were to plan for 2024 all over again, I probably would eliminate a separate book for home and garden. This would either live in a plain notebook that's undated, so I don't have to feel like I need to keep up with another dated book, or I would maybe find space for it in something else, like perhaps down the line if I were to keep the cousin and I'm not needing to take notes as frequently as I have to right now because of how many different jobs I'm juggling, maybe this type of planning could be done in my cousin, maybe. So that's one thing. I think I would potentially get rid of this. And I guess another thing is I'm unsure if an A6 is going to work for cousin replacement. So in the future, like 2025, there is a world where I might use this size to replace my TN. So maybe daily tasks could go in the daily pages, and then the weekly supplement could be a place where I'm tracking or planning my weekly tasks in advance. So that is one thing that I might change moving forward, like thinking ahead into 2025. The main reason being this is so much smaller and easier to carry around with me compared to the cousin. Having said that, I've learned through this reflection that as much as I felt very close to giving up on the cousin because it just felt like a very overwhelming book to be keeping track of. So I guess what I learned is that even though I wasn't really that excited about the cousin, I'm glad that I stuck with it and decided to lean in and use it, because it is really like such a powerful book. And I don't think I've ever appreciated a dated planner before in my life. And that is saying a lot, but I have used many planners in my lifetime and they've never clicked for me before. I think they were just a place for me to like doodle in and use different pens in, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, but I would just never stick with it because I didn't actually need it. Whereas I'm finding with this cousin, I truly feel like I need it and I would be lost without it. So in terms of other things that I would change, so I talked about how I've changed how I'm using this home and garden planner. Another thing is with my cousin, I'm thinking about adding chores to that sidebar so that I still have a place to remind myself to do them and to track them, but not make it feel as much of a heavy lift as it did with trying to keep up with it in this book. I have no plans to change my traveler's notebook, how I'm using this as a place to track my daily to-dos. I have no plans to change my health and wellness, no plans to change my meal planner. This is going really well. No plans on changing my personal diary or journal. This is going really well. And also no plans to change my 5-year Hobonichi. So these are all going very well. As for my A6, I think this is working out really well as a place for me to have fun with my inks and try to get into the habit of doing some drawing when I have time. And it's a very like low pressure, fun space to be in. So I don't have any plans to change it. I mean, if anything, I'm hoping that I continue to fill it out when things get busy. I guess we'll see at the end of Q2 how I've done for the next little while. So no plans on changing this. And how do I feel overall? So I will say having this many books can feel overwhelming at times, but at the same time, because everything has a pretty specific purpose, and I chip away at them when I have time, and I feel like I've really scoped down what each of these things are for, I'm feeling pretty good about it. I feel like for the most part, a lot of these things are functional. So because I've created a function for them, they're getting used, which I think is great. Feel a bit of emotional attachment to some of these things as well. Like really love how this health and wellness book has turned out. Could I track all of these things in my cousin? I probably could. I mean, there could be a world where I'm taking a lot of the things that I'm tracking here and fitting them into the monthly calendars in the cousin, since I feel like I'm not really using it to the fullest. So I do enjoy the variety as well, and none of these feel super overwhelming. I think if I had tried to get a 1 day a page type of book for all of my subjects, that would definitely be overwhelming. Final learning that I wanted to talk about today is I really seem to thrive with that weekly view. I think even though I like to have daily tasks, like I like to look at my tasks on a daily basis, I think my mind just operates the best when I get to have that weekly view. I do like to see that monthly view, but when I go so micro into the day, if I'm committing to my cousin and I'm just keeping this open all day long, I think I'm just gonna feel like I'm missing the amount of detail I need. And I don't know what it is, but this weekly view where I get to see like, what do I have going on Monday? What do I have going on Wednesday? And then being able to like flip through this and see upcoming appointments that I need to keep in mind for that week seems to align really well with the way I plan, the way I operate, and just the way I can get my work done. So I think for that reason, I don't know if there's a future where I can really live in this A6, even though I love the portable size of it, unless I'm able to make that weekly supplement work. Or maybe I find another A6 book that combines all of those things, although if it wasn't already obvious, I'm a huge Hobonichi fan. Anyway, that's all that I had for you today. I hope you are doing well. It is a long weekend here in Canada, so if it's a long weekend for you as well, I hope you have a wonderful weekend. And I look forward to hearing all about your planner systems and what you've been up to in the comments. So please let me know what you've been up to and how things are going with your system. If you've made it this far to the end of the video, thank you so much for still being here. I appreciate you so much. And I will see you soon in the next video. Bye.